Good morning. It's Tuesday, April 16th, and yesterday they ran the Boston Marathon. The Boston Marathon is one of the 6 major marathons in the world, and around 30,000 runners from over 100 countries participated in this year's Boston Marathon. As you know, a marathon covers 26 miles. And in the Boston Marathon, in addition to the 26 miles, there's 814 feet of elevation. And that makes it one of the most challenging of the 6 major marathons in the world. Now, the course starts in Hopkinton and finishes in Copley Square, where various groups starting at scattered time will end the race. There's elite men's runners and there are elite women runners. And the men usually finish about 10-15 minutes ahead of the women. But it's a great race. 30,000 people participate. Many of you may not know this, but at one point in my life, for about 10 years, I was a marathon runner. And during that time, I ran in several great races. I ran the New York Marathon 3 times. I ran the Long Island Marathon 3 times. I never got to do the Boston Marathon because you had to qualify for the Boston Marathon. And at that time, I was not capable of running the qualifying time for somebody in my age group. And I never did run a qualifying time for anybody in my age group. My best marathon was a Long Island Marathon that I ran in 3 hours and 38 minutes. I finished every marathon that I started except for the first marathon. The first marathon that I chose to run started in Montauk Point, Long Island, and ended in Southampton, Long Island. And I had been training for about 3 or 4 months in order to run this marathon. But as I found out during that race, that was not enough time for training, starting from scratch. Later on in my marathon in Korea, I could train for about 3 months and run marathons because I was running 4 or 5 miles every day in those days. But that first race, I did not understand the magnitude of the physical effort that was required to finish the race. So after running 22 miles, I stopped in this parking lot on the way back to Southampton and waited for these cars that the marathon had arranged for people to be picked up who couldn't finish the race. And so I got a ride in that car back to the finish line, and I came back to the house determined to train harder for the next race. And eventually I created a training regimen that allowed me to run 2 marathons a year. I would train seriously starting in the summer, sometime in July. And I would train for 10 or 12 weeks in preparation for New York Marathon, or the marathons that started running again in October and November, which was New York and New Jersey and Washington, D.C. And I ran all of those marathons. But once I had my training routine down, I would run a marathon in November, and then I would ease off for a week or 2 and begin a little bit of training, because in January I would go down to Bermuda and run the Bermuda Marathon there. And it was a very wonderful routine that I had set up in order for me to handle all of the marathon running. And when you run a marathon, you really have to be in decent shape. And one year, when I was training for marathon, I was out with a group doing a bike ride, and that was part of the training that I had decided that I would do that year to get ready for the marathon. I don't remember which marathon it was, but it did not have a particular good ending, because on this bike ride with several people, I was caught up on a hill behind a young lady who was not going as fast as I was, and I realized that I was going to hit her if I continued on the line that I was riding my bike. So in order to not hit her, I had to put on the brakes and had to slide slightly to the side, and I fell off the bike and I got banged around pretty badly. And that caused me to have limited time to train for the next marathon. And what happened was, because of that lack of training, I ran the worst marathon in my career. 4 hours and 20 some odd minutes, because I was in agony over most of that trip, and I couldn't maintain my normal speed, which was not very fast, because my marathoning speed, as I told you, the best was 3:38. I had a couple in the 3:40 range, which was good, but I enjoyed it. I truly enjoyed the marathon. And in many marathons, there were times when the runners, the crowd was small. And I remember one of these smaller marathons that I was running in. I was running alone for most of the race. And that resulted in me getting my name and my picture in the newspaper, the local newspaper. They took a shot of me running alone in this marathon. But I finished that race in a reasonably good time. And then I took home the article that had my picture on the front page of this local newspaper, and they called me Saul instead of Stan. But in any event, all the time that I ran marathons was a very enjoyable period of my life. They were very enjoyable, and you had to put time and effort in order to be a decent runner, somebody who could finish 26 miles in a decent time. So believe me, the guys that are running marathons in 2 hours and 20 minutes are in terrific shape. So I leave you with that this morning. Have a great day. Bye.